others has water talkies, book reading, thesis club, and water arts. Focus of Water Thesis Club is on bringing the student scholars who have done or are doing a thesis, alias research on water matters, to the session in order to discuss with them the making of the thesis, research, and the issues around the subject covered. Myself, Ekta Gupta, CEO of Paresh Chhajed-Picha, is the moderator of the session. I am joined by Professor Vishal Narain from Management Development Institute, Gurgaon, as the discussant for today's thesis club session. For today's session, we have a young scholar, Paresh, to share his research on scope and challenge of sanitation planning in small Indian cities, the case of fecal sludge management. Paresh is an architect and an urban regional planner by training. Over the last decade, he has been involved in practice and research related to urban water and sanitation services in urban areas. He is keenly interested in provisions of basic services, public finance, governance policy making, and social justice. He was associated with Performance Assessment System, a BMGA funded project at CEPT University, where he developed an understanding of various aspects of service delivery. It afforded him an opportunity to appreciate the role of governance, policy, and public finance and social aspects in planning and delivery of services. Earlier, he briefly worked on urban planning, environment, transportation, and housing sectors during internships and on reality projects as an architect. Mr. Paresh is currently pursuing PhD from Sitara, an interdisciplinary center at IIT Bombay. His doctoral research attempts to analyze the development in sanitation policy and the various dimensions which create an enabling environment for implementation at sub-national levels in India. He looks at deployment of fecal sludge management, an innovative solution for management of excreta in small cities. It also attempts to understand the challenges faced by urban local governments and how state governments can make their jobs easier. His research focuses on lack of access to safety managed sanitation is challenged across the world, especially in urban areas of global south. Nearly 80% of wastewater from urban areas in India returns to the environment without any treatment. The Sustainable Development Goals recognize safely managed sanitation as a goal and a driver for the achievement of numerous other goals, that is, reaching the sanitation target is necessary for reaching many other goals. Experts agree that sanitation goal cannot be achieved with the conventional solution, that is the centralized sewer system. They also agree that non-conventional solutions like decentralized treatment and fecal sludge management need to rapidly planned and executed. Through decentralized treatment has been in the know-how for over 3 decades. Its application is limited to institutional setting and pilot projects. On the other hand, FSM is gaining traction with more than 200 operational fecal sludge treatment plants and over 1,000 of various stages of planning. Considering the first FSTP became operational only in late 2015, the pace is phenomenal. The development, however, is highly uneven. While some states have moved from piloting in a few elites to scaling up, many others are struggling. His doctoral thesis aims to understand the FSM planning process, even as the uptake was unraveling over the course of this research. Using a comparative case study approach, he attempts to understand the broader environment in which sanitation planning is carried out in small cities and how various factors facilitate or constrain the same. So I welcome Mr. Paresh to Friday Water Thesis session and request Vishal to take the conversation ahead from here.
Okay, thank you, Ekta, and Paresh, welcome once again. I now invite you to share your talk. You'll have about 25 minutes.
Okay.
And after that, I'll have some remarks, comments, and clarifications, and then we'll open the floor to the audience for any questions and for further discussion, right? So after 20 minutes, I'll give you a signal. So
Perfect.
now you start. Yeah.
Yes.
The floor is yours. Yeah.
Thank you, Vishal. Can you please project my presentation, please?
Yeah.
Is it visible?
Yes.
Yes, but it is not in presentation mode.
Oh, I mean the full screen.
Yeah.
The slideshow.
Yeah. So I'll be talking about the challenges of planning wastewater management or sanitation in general in Kerala. And I will be talking, this is part of my PhD research, where I am doing a comparative study of Kerala and Maharashtra, a town in Kerala and a town in Maharashtra. And I'll go ahead. To begin with, I will first like to acknowledge my supervisor, Professor N.C. Narayanan, my colleagues, Gautam, Neelam, Shruti, Hari, Sridhar, Zach, who've all contributed. Who've all listened to me a lot over the course of this research. I'd also like to thank the CanLP team based in Alleppey and the Summer School 2018 participants. The summer school itself was organized by CanLP, and we were leading the research, as well as research participants who are not named here for ethical reasons. Next, please. So today I'll be introducing Kerala and the Alappuzha, that is Alleppey, which is the case study that I'll be presenting, the methodology and the methods that I've used, I have findings and results, and then discuss and conclude. Next, please. Kerala is one of the best, Kerala as a state, we know it as one of the better developed states in the country. It has best social development indicators, which are comparable to many European countries. It is way ahead in terms of access to toilets. According to the census 2011, almost 97% households had access to toilet, compared to about 82 in all over India, and that too limited to urban areas. But in Kerala, even the rural areas have very high share of households having access to toilet. And it is also one of the better governed states in the country. And this is based on recent research by Praja Foundation and others who look at governance and have governance rankings in the country. However, wastewater treatment is almost absent in the town, in urban areas in the state, except for a couple of cities, bigger cities, Trivandrum and Kochi, which have sewage treatment plants, and FSTP is fecal sludge treatment plants in Kochi and a smaller town called Calcutta. All other cities do not have any facility for wastewater treatment or excreta treatment. And there is also a consensus amongst the government machinery that they will need non-conventional solutions in smaller towns. So Kerala has about 93 cities, of which 6 are municipal corporations, 87 are municipalities, and they are very sure that they will not be able to have sewerage systems in these 87 cities. And there have been earlier efforts to implement STPs and FSTPs, and they have not materialized for numerous reasons. Next, please. So because they've not materialized, this was the reason we said that, okay, we need to understand why it is not happening in Kerala. So the city of choice here was Alappuzha because one of the key reasons to have one of the key determinants of a case study is support of government in the type of work that we do, or the work that will be presented here. Support of the government is essential, because they have to agree to share their information, agree to be interviewed, and this is across different departments, different levels of government. So because there was a very long-term commitment, or there was commitment from the government that they would, we were doing a lot of work in Alleppey, so we decided to continue there. So Alappuzha is in central Kerala, which is roughly 60 kilometers south of Kochi. It has been historically it was a port town, but and there were canals that were built to connect warehouses to the port, so to facilitate movement of goods from inner city to the port. It is now a tourist attraction. It is sandwiched between Arabian Sea on the east and Vembanad Lake in the east and Arabian Sea in the west. And there is also Pamba River, which runs through the town. And the topography is relatively flat. The soil is porous, and it has a very high groundwater table. And these are the characteristics that determine the choice of sanitation technology in the town. Next, please. Again, as we see the land use map of Kerala, of Alappi, on the west, you see the green zone on the west is part of the Kuttanad ecosystem, where rice cultivation below mean sea level is practiced. And on in the middle, you see two canals running east-west. The city has a population of about 1.7 lakhs. The density is very high, and it is also true that the density of Kerala is amongst the highest in the country, much higher than the average India density. Next, please. The methodology I use here is a mixed case study method with city as the unit of analysis. City because it has mandate for service provision, and also it's a unit of urban planning and sanitation planning in general. The city of Alappuzha had proposed FSM to utilize Amrut funds, and it was yet to implement when I began the case study, and it is yet to implement as I present today. And there was a possibility of action research, which can be a big reason for selecting a case. I use mixed methods. The quantitative method is used, or household surveys I use for understanding the sanitation situation in the town. And I use the qualitative methods to understand the challenges in the process. Next, please. So we conducted a large household surveys through a Canal P summer school in 2018. We had about 300 students who did surveys in about teams of 2. And we covered 18 wards of the 52 wards in the city. They are some of the densest wards in the, so 13 of the 26 most dense wards were covered, and they are home to about 18 of the 52 wards. So we reached about more than 2,000 households for the survey, and the quantitative analysis used about 1,700 households. Next, please. For the qualitative part, I use the enabling environment as a analytical framework, and this framework itself was developed based on review of similar frameworks. We use multiple sources of data, interviews, documents, and minutes of meetings, etc. So I began identifying participants from local government, and then through snowball sampling, I identified other participants. And many of the participants, or many of the documents that I reviewed, were also I was led to these documents by participants of this research. Next, please. The analytical framework I use has 7 components: the government support, legal and regulatory framework, institutional arrangements, capacity of stakeholders, financial arrangements for planning, for infrastructure, and for operations, monitoring of the planning process and of service provision, and socio-cultural acceptance. So next, please. And this is the relationship between them. So government support is necessary for sanitation planning, and government support provides or creates financial arrangements. It creates monitoring arrangements. It creates, most importantly, it creates legal and regulatory framework, which leads to sanitation planning, which mandates institutions for to plan, etc. Next, please. So based on the survey of about on the results of 1,700 households, what I find and this is the sanitation service chain that I use, that is typically used for analysis of sanitation services in a town. So the user interface is green, and you can keep clicking because each of them is an animation. So the user interface is green because almost all households have a toilet. So access to toilets is taken care of. Collection and emptying and conveyance are orange because, Mansi, can you please keep clicking? Thank you. Collection is orange and emptying, collection is orange because many of the on-site systems used for collection are inappropriate. They are pits and not septic tanks, and pits are not very useful or not very safe in the very high water table context of Alleppey. For emptying is orange because manual emptying is reported. The private service providers are not regulated at all, and not all on-site systems are regularly emptied. In fact, some of them have never been emptied in more than 10 years, and they are many of them are much older. Treatment is red because there is no infrastructure to treat, and disposal, again, the disposal is red because there is no treatment and the untreated waste is simply dumped, and therefore there is no possibility of reuse of treated fecal sludge. Next, please. I also, since I found that, okay, we need FS, or at the end of the previous slide, we concluded that probably FSM is the way forward, and I'll talk about why FSM is the only forward later. So we try to understand what have been the various efforts that have been in town to implement or improve FSM service chain, and we found that there was a FSTP that was proposed in Sarvodayapuram, where the city already has a used to have a dump site, and which had to be shut down because people protested. Of course, because the people protested because the dump site was not well managed. So what happened was unsegregated solid waste was simply dumped at the site, and there was no people had no recourse but to bear with the negative consequences of that dumping. City sanitation plan was prepared by Suchitwa Mission, and again with very little involvement of the local government. There were treatment plants have proposed under Amrut, but many of them are STPs, and the mobile FSTPs have not taken off yet. Again, the projects under Amrut have gone a sea of change. In 2015, when they submitted their first proposal, they had citywide FSM proposed, and then they've watered it down to having treatment plants for institutions. KSPCB, that is Kerala State Pollution Control Board, has been trying to develop a mobile treatment unit as well as use existing treatment facilities in vicinity for treatment, but these efforts have not led much in the long term. I mean, for some reason or the other, they fizzled out in a few months' time. And then there has been Canal P's efforts, which they have implemented a pilot DWATS in a small locality, and they've also proposed replacement of pits with septic tanks. Next, please. I have, I think, close to or a little over 40 interviews that I have used, interviews and documents that I'm using to present the findings of the enabling environment related to status of enabling environment. Now, government support at the national and the sub-national level, at the state level, there is a lot of support available. However, it is at the local level that the FSM or sanitation itself is not a priority. And as one of the councillors said, if the local government is expected to do 100 things, wastewater is the 100th thing that they will do. And there is a strong resistance by all councillors for establishment of any centralized facility in their ward. And this stance has not changed even after all the councillors were taken for a site visit to Devanali, India's first FSTP in near Bangalore. Next, please. Legal and regulatory framework. Again, there is no single statute that governs sanitation services, but a multiple number of statutes, rules, etc. They cover different parts of the sanitation service chain, but overall they are good. However, what is issue, what they lack is, for example, the local government regulations or Kerala municipal building rules, for example, they do not include details of on-site systems that are appropriate for the context of Kerala. Similarly, but ULBs can, or local governments can promulgate their own bylaws to overcome such limitations. But what is important is that there is lack of enforcement of all statutes. So as I said, we've observed, or we were reported, our households reported use of manual emptying for on-site systems. The inspection of on-site systems is highly inadequate because it is only a part of uh, inspection of property when it is under construction. And the notice by Pollution Control Board to Municipal Council went in vain, or did not get much traction, because council could get away with a very simple reason that they don't have land. Next, please. There are again institutional arrangements. There is a very clear mandate to ULBs. However, it is not owned by them, and no ULB in the state is provides drinking water supply or sanitation services. So drinking water is supplied by Kerala Water Authority, which again there can be a case for, or the Act of 1994 required that KWA pass on all the assets, etc., to local governments, but that has also never happened. Partly because it is KWA's interest, partly because it is local governments who do not want to do it. There are other numerous government agencies which are mandated with supporting ULBs or overseeing their administration, etc. But the mandates are fuzzy, and as I'll talk about it later, but there are duplicate arrangements for project approval and capacity building, depending on who is funding the project, etc. Similarly, there is no clear mandate for monitoring in the, everything, whether it is especially the services or the planning process, needs to be monitored for its timely implementation, or ensuring that the quality of services is good. But there is absolutely no mandate, or there is no initiative to monitor services or monitor the planning process itself. Now, service level benchmarks that were initiated, they are all the local governments across India are required to publish them annually to avail grants, performance grants or incentive grants from the Finance Commission. And the service level benchmarks, the earlier ones, the old ones, were focused on sewerage. The new ones were added only in 2017 through an annexure to the National Fecal Sludge and Septage Management policy. But even in Kerala, those new indicators have not been accepted. So in Alappuzha, in 2019, when I was still studying, or when this case study was still under work, the indicators that they had published were clearly focused on sewerage, and they said that they want to implement sewerage to cover 20% of the town that year, when there was no such intention. So effectively, there is no accountability for the targets that they report, or they publish. Next, please. So there is no experience in planning and planning or provision of wastewater services at the local government level. And the capacity building efforts have also focused on, not focused on local governments. The planning, the city sanitation plan, as I pointed out, was done by the district office of Suchitwa Mission, and the local government was hardly involved. So the capacity building workshop, which was held, was also attended only by Suchitwa Mission consultants and not by local governments. There is, of course, little capacity to oversee operations. Even on the capacity building efforts of Amrut, have also focused on implementation of program rather than building the capacity of the local town. Their focus has been on how do you iron out kinks in implementation of the program. There are numerous arrangements for financing capital works. However, local governments do not take up unless and until, like there have been, so Alappuzha, for example, had access to Suchitwa Mission funds, KIIFB funds, but they were not accessed because they were not found, or they were not compulsion in a sense. And they had no option but to use Amrut funds, which also they tried to not use. So they said that they wanted to divert the funds to some other sector, but the state mission and the national mission rejected that proposal. So they were forced, in a sense, forced to use the Amrut funds for sanitation, which again they've not been able to use till date. And operations, they can levy tax, which is not levied, and private service providers levy emptying charges, and they can be as high as 10,000 rupees per trip. Next, please. There is a so toilets have been accepted, and on-site systems for containing toilet fecal waste have been accepted. And there is also we conducted a study to understand willingness to pay for replacement of inappropriate on-site systems with appropriate ones. So, and there is a willingness to pay for that. And this willingness also increases if the households know that the waste, when it is emptied, will be managed well. But there is a strong resistance for setting up any treatment facility in the vicinity, and this is called as NIMBY by officials, and the reported reasons by officials are fear and decline of property value, failure of the facility can lead to a very unpleasant life, and lack of working model in the state to elicit confidence. There have been lack of efforts to bring about a change in attitude. Now, this NIMBY has a history in Kerala, or this public resistance to waste infrastructure has a long history in Kerala. Between 2011 and 13, there were protests across 13 cities in Kerala to stop dumping of or stop use of centralized waste processing facilities for solid waste management. And these ranged from Trivandrum to Alappi. Most of the major 13 cities had to face protests. Now, these 13, so the state government in response has moved to a decentralized solid waste management system, which is still a work in progress. In Alappi, it has worked well. In central wards, it is still not it is not covering the entire city yet. And yet there have been no efforts to remedy the situation. That how do you the waste processing, the dumping sites itself need to be remedied, because it still continues to pollute groundwater and have negative externalities. And it also had there been any effort to remedy the situation, you could bring about a change in perspective of people, so that inform people that the state government or local governments are serious about waste management. But nothing has to that effort. Nothing like that has happened yet. And the IC efforts have largely focused on solid waste management. They've not reached liquid waste management yet. Next, please. So to summarize, there are red. So in this red are the constraints, and the green are facilitating factors, and the black are in a sense neutral. So besides these 7 factors, this only summarizes what I spoke over the last 7-8 minutes. There are a couple of other factors that are that we observed, that there is unavailable, or that were reported by many of the officials and other participants, that there is lack of suitable land parcels. Now, Kerala, as I mentioned earlier, has a very high population density. The other factor at work here is that the rural-urban continuum that we see in Kerala. So unlike, say, Gujarat, Maharashtra, or other states in the country, where you have a town and between town and a neighboring village or neighboring town, there would be fields that separate the two. In Kerala, you just have settlements across. So there is not much difference between rural Kerala and urban Kerala. So that leaves very little land that is available to locate such treatment plants. Plus, there are requirements that these land parcels have to meet, that they have to be at a certain distance from human settlements, etc., which officials argue that we don't have such land parcels in Kerala. And also the technology that has been chosen under Amrut is very high cost, and it has not been in use anywhere else. So in India, we have close to 200 FSTPs now. Vishal, how much time do I have?
Another 5 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you. The technology that they've chosen, electrocoagulation, is very, very capital intensive, and it is not very appropriate for septage, treatment of septage. But they have continued and persisted with that to such an extent that the person or the academic who was heading the committee was replaced with a bureaucrat in the state machinery. Next, please. As I said earlier, that FSM is a necessity in Alappuzha. For all the other solutions are not enough or cannot be implemented. The sewerage cannot be laid because the land topography is very, very flat, and the very high groundwater ensures that it will become technically not very feasible, and if feasible, financially very, very expensive. We've through Canalp's efforts, we've been able to implement a small DWATS system in to serve 50 households. But considering that there are close to 40,000 households, monitoring such small systems, numerous small systems like hundreds and thousands, it's not going to be easy. And I mean, and there is example of Bangalore where they are not able to monitor such systems. Necessity of household surveys for planning FSM. Now, household surveys are necessary for planning FSM because we do not have a system of data where we know what systems are in use at household level. For laypersons, a pit and a septic tank can be the same because it is simply containing the system. But from technology or from treatment perspective, the quality of fecal sludge varies in these systems, and you need to know what quality of fecal sludge you are going to get at the treatment facility. And though not discussed here, my paper, which was published, demonstrates a method, and it is also a small part of that paper, demonstrates a method for deciphering on-site systems. And the same method has been used in other places as well, like Devraj and all use it in Tamil Nadu for a small town in Tamil Nadu. Next, please. There have been efforts in Alappuzha, and they have been led by various actors. They focus on different components of the service chain, but and all these efforts, there is almost no involvement of the local government, which has the mandate for service provision. There has been no effort to raise awareness, and because AMC is not involved, there is absolutely no coordination between actors as well as between efforts. So the enabling environment, as I said, all the dimensions that enabling environment I spoke of are at least partially supportive. They are not restrictive. However, all efforts are thwarted by lack of support from local leadership and public opposition, which officials called NIMBY. And AMC is aware of, so whatever limitations are there across all the dimensions, local governments are aware of how they can be bypassed or how they can be overcome. Next, please.
So do try to wrap up in a minute.
Yes. I think I have 2 or 3 slides and right. I'll be done. So is it NIMBY? NIMBY not in my backyard. It is typically used by project proponents to thwart public protest or public opposition. But let's come back and see, or let's be aware that the local governments and governments across Kerala have a very poor public sector agencies have a poor track record in centralized waste management. They have not been able to establish a good model in the state, and there have been no efforts to change public perception. So they are simply delegitimizing genuine concerns of people, and their concerns are genuine because there is a good chance that a project such project fails, and this will negatively affect their lives, and they will be locked in the place because fall in property prices will mean they will not be able to sell the property and move out. And also there are social consequences like not being able to get the kids married, especially sons married, because these are genuine concerns that are a reality of our lives. And it also gives us free pass to local public agencies with poor track record. So should we call NIMBY? My argument is that we should not be calling it NIMBY, and instead focus on creating awareness, or not only awareness, but remedying the situation before even we start creating an awareness. Next, please. My reflection on the enabling environment framework itself is that it helps identify the precise reason for unmanaged wastewater and fecal sludge in Kerala. And it helps eliminate rival explanations. Like, for example, there have been explanations that finance is a concern. In Kerala or in Alappuzha particularly, that is not a concern. There are other explanations, similar explanations, but I think in Kerala, at least in Alappuzha, it is clearly the combination of public resistance with lack of efforts from the local government to overcome that public resistance, which is creating, which is not being able, which is holding back local governments in Kerala. And as I said earlier, I did find a couple of other factors at play. But again, should I consider it as part of the enabling environment? Selection of inappropriate technology? Certainly not, because it is outcome of the planning process. And unavailability of suitable land parcels should be, because it is part of the planning system. Next, please. To conclude, there are gaps in every component of the service chain. However, lack of treatment facility is the missing link in Alappuzha. The efforts to overcome limitations of the service chain are disjointed, and coordination is needed between various actors and their efforts. AMC's lack of involvement in planning is striking, and that is one thing that needs to be overcome immediately. Efforts to bring about a change in public perception are needed, and some of them can be remedy of legacy dumping grounds, creating of model facilities, and showcase their success. Next, please. And I find that the enabling environment is a good checklist to understand environment in which planning is conducted. However, as qualitative researchers or people who work with very uncertain or very different grounds, so typically these frameworks are developed by scholars from the global north who may not have understanding of ground reality. We need to be aware, we need to be open to other dimensions and other factors at play. Almost all dimensions work at all government levels. So you say something like policy making is a prerogative of the national level, and the national and law making is prerogative of the local at the subnational level. But local governments also can make a part of it, make bylaws, for example. So all dimensions work at all levels of government, and that disaggregation needs to be looked into when one is working with a framework as broad as enabling environment framework. And important for government of Kerala to work on creating an enabling environment, specifically clarifying roles and responsibilities, increasing awareness, remedying existing landfill sites before they venture into planning hardware interventions for any other centralized waste management. Thank you. I think that's
okay. Thank you, Paresh. I'll just take a minute or so to summarize what I understood, sure, and then we'll move to some questions for discussion. So you basically studied, the sanitation planning challenge in Kerala, taking the case of Alappuzha, and you worked with a case study approach using both qualitative and quantitative methods. And what I understood, that one of the reasons for selecting Alappuzha was the ease of access to information, to your people and gather the data that you were looking for. You worked the snowball sampling approach. You spoke a lot about what you call the sanitation service chain. I gathered that one of the reasons for the current state was the lack of very serious involvement or commitment by the local governments, right? And I was also struck by your observations about the rural-urban continuum in Kerala. And then you concluded with some kinds of directions for governments to contemplate, on sanitation planning. So that's just a quick summary. So just for the sake of just to allow you to expand on some of your points. So you worked with a case study approach, taking a case of a specific context. And if you read Yin, who's like the classic text, classic author on case study, he says that a case study is always done for something bigger than the case, right? So a case study we do, not because we're interested in the case per se, but because it's a case of something. It represents a larger problem in which we're interested, right? And when we do case study, we do what is called analytic generalization. I mean, we generalize not like statistically, but like theoretically or conceptually. Yeah. So for you, I mean, what is here the value of this research beyond the specific case? And what kind of things can you generalize to?
Sorry, I don't. I think Yin does say that it is the case study can be done for the simple reason that you are interested in the case. So I don't really agree with your first point, but we can debate on that somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah. But so I think the case here is very useful for not only for Alappuzha itself, but also for Kerala, because across Kerala, local governments are struggling with it. So if you look at even recently, there was so Amrut projects not going ahead is true for all the 9 cities that are getting funded under Amrut. Recently, there were protests in Kozhikode, if I recollect right. So that's a lesson. The lesson is true for at least for local governments across Kerala. So that generalization is a possibility there. Besides that, I think so that generalization is there, and the other part of the contribution, which is not coming from case study, but is that enabling environment as a framework itself needs to be, one needs to be very cautious with use of such frameworks, or one needs to be very attentive to details that come from such case. And many of the things that I study here, even if I say that it is a case of Alappuzha, many of the things are applicable across for all ULBs in the state.
Sure.
So where do you draw boundaries is something that I'm still, or something that I struggled for a very long time. And then finally decided, okay, how do you bound? Some things are context, but important from the case, and some things are very specific to the case.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. And, you worked with a snowball sampling approach, you said, right? So,
yes.
And I don't think that, so I don't think many researchers use snowball sampling. They would go for more conventional ways, or like purposive sampling, or so just say more about snowball sampling. What is the logic? How is it done? Why is it relevant for your kind of work?
Yeah. So there is a history to it that I was new to Kerala when I started doing this research.
Yeah.
So I was very well aware of the context in, say, Gujarat and Maharashtra, and even some states in northern India. But Kerala, I was completely new. So Kerala, and also Kerala has a very different structure compared to Gujarat and Maharashtra. The decentralization is much stronger, or local governments are much stronger in Kerala. So for that reason, I started. So snowball sampling I use only to identify participants whom I would interview. And after your question, if I think of it, the way I am placing my case study, I think one can as well say that I have purposely selected, or I have purposely selected the case of Alappuzha, even though that was not it was not a purposive selection of Alappuzha as a case. But again, as researchers, or as qualitative researchers, particularly, the research evolves over a period of time, and you can find justifications at a later date. So that is how it is. But snowball sampling, purposive sampling, I'm still so if I think of it, I was directed to institutions that I should talk to, and then within those institutions, so I could identify all the institutions gradually. I did speak to a few non-governmental organizations working in the state, and that also was that happened because of our connections apart from this project. So we were able to. So point is that the snowball sampling there was a limited use of snowball sampling. And if I think of it, when you are new to a context, you may want to use a snowball sampling. But one has one has to be aware, or one needs to be aware of the limitation that if you take snowball sampling, you can end up listening to only one side of the story.
True.
and we were able to overcome that because we went to non-governmental organizations also. So
yeah. But what I understand, snowball sampling simply meant that like one interview gave you leads to another one.
yes.
And that's how snowball sampling basically works, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, I was also struck by your comment that a lot of this research is driven by, models or frameworks that are developed by scholars of the global north, right? And we need something that's more locally grounded in the context of the global south, right? So then as a researcher, does that mean that we start like on a blank slate, right? And study our own context, immerse in the context, and then find new ways of talking about it or theorizing about it, rather than start with models developed in the global north and see if they fit our context. Because I struggle with the same question when I talk about like policy change, like all the public policy literature, right, developed with scholars from the global north, and we keep trying to fit our context to those models. But we could also turn it around. Like we could say, no, maybe there's a unique way of theorizing about policy change in the global south. So is that something that you're hinting at, that we start from a blank slate, look at what's happening here, and then try to develop models of theoretical frameworks that help us understand those?
So there is no one size fits all solution here.
Yeah.
There can be both ways, that you add nuance to models or theories developed by people from the global north.
Yeah.
And the other way is that you take a more grounded theory approach and develop your own understanding, develop smaller theories that are appropriate for your context. I think both the approaches have their own merits, and one can choose to go. I mean, our research is also dictated by what our institutions are comfortable with, or what our supervisors are comfortable with, especially for PhD researchers. For me, my supervisor was very comfortable with going on the field and getting information, and then looking at what is coming out of it, then trying to find out if it fits in theory. If it doesn't fit in theory, then what do you want to do with it, etc. But I also know of other professors who would go to the ground with almost a very rigid framework, and that is the way it works with them, or works for them. So I think one has to find their own way to deal with the story that they want to tell.
True. Yeah. So I think, so all research is a joint intellectual journey between the student and the supervisor, and it depends on what best, caters to the intellectual appetite of both the student and the supervisor, right? That's true. Okay. So, a final thing from my side, let's suppose that you were invited as a consultant, as a sanitation expert, to serve on some, government advisory body, and they asked you for 2 or 3 most important things, right, that you would say by means of your advice to them, in regard to sanitation planning from your research. What would those 2 or 3 most important takeaways be? Like, they said that, can you, Paresh, tell us the 2 or 3 most important things that we should do to improve sanitation planning from your research? What would those 2 or 3 things be? Like, what is the policy relevance of the applied practical relevance of this kind of work?
Yes. So just to keep you posted, or we were invited to provide inputs to Government of Kerala guidelines, and we did do that. But so coming back to your question, 2 or 3 points that I would very quickly want to highlight is: one, give a very clear mandate to local governments and other agencies, and do not duplicate them, even if you have different fundings coming from. Right now, if you see different funding, so if you have Amrut funding, you have a different set of organizations which are looking into technical sanction, administrative sanction, etc. And similarly, if you have other, say, World Bank funding or other funding, they take a different route for approvals. I would say, don't play with your institutions. Let them work, even if it means that there is a little delay in implementation. But your systems have to be robust enough to take that delay. But build your systems that are robust. Second, strengthen your local governments and strengthen the capacity. The financial, important to mention here, that local governments in Kerala are very financially fairly strong. A lot of funds come to them as planned funds, which they are free to do. They are untied funds. So unlike, say, state governments in Maharashtra or Gujarat, for example, a lot of funds to local governments in Kerala comes as untied funds, but they are often spent on, they are not spent on sanitation, which is not a priority right now. So strengthen your local government, strengthen all the other organizations that support local governments.
Okay.
These are two, I think, that I can think of quickly.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Paresh. So I'll stop here and give the floor back to Ekta to moderate any other questions or comments that others in the audience may have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I have a word, please? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have known Paresh for many years, and as a matter of fact, this is one of the very few frank and candid type of presentation. Something which has not been going on well, he has managed to do a presentation also.
Thank
well.
You.
So I would see, being an implementer and doing work on the field, I would like him to just think off the box. What are the solutions, technical solutions, which have been working in Kerala, in Alappuzha, or in any other say cities, which could work at Alappuzha, and try as far as possible to bring them in and make sure that vehicle sludge management gets some returns of income. That is the first thing. Whenever vehicle sludge management gets returns of income, everything will start working for the vehicle sludge management, and community will work. Everyone will work for it, and even ULBs will like to bring up their finances very well. So this is one of the points I would like to just give to Paresh, please. Thank you very much.
Yes. So I don't think it will make a financial model work. I have studied other cities where FSM is being implemented. I don't think it makes financial sense, to be sure. We have to consider it as a public service, as a public good, and pump in public money. How much public money is what we can debate on, or can be debated, and it can vary based on the city's context. So city where there is no industry will probably have to spend a lot, will have to rely on transfers probably more. But there is no denying that it is a public good, and the public finances will have to take majority of the share. Said that, I think, but we also cannot deny that levying taxes or increasing taxes particularly is a political process, and we need to engage there, get it started, even if it is a small amount, get people to start paying for the service, and then see what is the level that can be accepted by a majority of the people to increase revenue from the service. Reuse of vehicle sludge, I am not very sure. So currently I know that Sinnar is reusing them, or other cities are reusing them, but it is without any revenue. Also, again, reuse needs to be very safely done. Pathogens need to be tested before it is reused, and that is something that we don't have facilities for everywhere. Finally, your technical solution, I think there can be technical solutions, especially Kerala, the width is not large. So from the coast to the hills, 40-50 kilometers. So if you can have something like a mobile FSTPs or something that simply separates the solids from the liquids, you treat the liquids on the plains and transport the solids to the hills where there are rubber plantations, where the density is less. That is one possibility. But as much as I know, that possibility, I mean, it's still a long distance. I mean, there are regulatory challenges with decentral or mobile FSTPs, where I think the Pollution Control Board does not agree with having something that is, as a regulator, it does not agree with mobile treatment facility yet. And therefore, so there probably will have to be somebody who can advocate with the regulator to allow such a thing to happen. Does that satisfy you, Professor Seshadri?
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. I only said that those places in which public money has been used, and they have also been doing well. And public money and some money which comes out of fecal sludge, of the whatever is the things which is done, is also an extra bonus, and that is very good. As a matter of fact, DA has been trying to make partially cured fecal sludge as a fuel for their kiln. This vertical shaft brick kiln,
Okay.
and ash itself is mixed up with the clay and used in the brick. So they get into the form of bricks. So everything is sanitized, and this pathogen and all this problem will not be there, because it is going to be totally incinerated. So this is coming up, and I feel that this would be a very good solution. I mean, you can just give a try. There is even a pilot plant can be done,
Yes.
and you take the half cured fecal sludge. It has got methane still to be given out. The fuel can be used in the kiln, and the kiln, whatever is the ash which comes out, gets mixed with you can mix it with the clay and make raw bricks, and bake it and make it into full bricks. And bricks are used in places where it won't mix with groundwater or with any other things, and all the fecal sludge is totally sanitized, that way.
Okay.
So this is only a try where you find uh, groundwater is very high. You can't have DVAT solutions. You can't have septic tank solutions. You can't have soak pits, and many things are not possible in Kerala. That is another thing.
True.
No, thank you, Paresh, for enlightening us with all these good things. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thanks, Vishal. Thanks, Paresh, for the wonderful discussion. So I would like to invite Dr. Mansi. Mansi, if you would like to ask any questions or add on something to the discussion.
Thank you, Ekta and Vishal, for taking this conversation today wonderfully, as usual. And thanks, Paresh, and good to meet you here. And also see your work that you have moved beyond Gujarat and Maharashtra and gone somewhere in the no man's land. And you also raised this point that there could have been an opportunity to do grounded approach. In fact, I was also very eager to, get into that point and say, why didn't you take up that as an option, But anyway, my question is more on the planning as well as governance side of it, because you do mention the polycentric governance approach, which NC has mastered in his work of wetlands. And I'm also happy that NC is not appearing in our shows, but he's at least sending his students to our shows. So anyway, so when you already talk about these institutions, and you raise a very, very pertinent point saying that this repetition of projects are happening. And that's where we need to be extremely careful how we are really using our funds. I want to understand from you, because you also mentioned that Amrit project is now almost a disaster actually everywhere for that matter. And this high-tech energy consuming and money consuming systems. Somewhere in your presentation, I got a sense that you are kind of a proponent of a centralized system, whereas, I mean, not directly hinting the word, but the way you presented, I almost felt into a situation that should Kerala go for a centralized system because this large money is from ADB, World Bank is pumping into the state. But I do understand your point that when you say that there is an acceptance for decentralized system. But you being a planner and architect, I want to ask you a question. Why do you blame the planning in Kerala, land use planning, to be one of the determinants for poor sanitation planning? Because see, land use planning to large extent has come to the state much later than the property rights of the state. Because Kerala is like this because the property rights distribution is like this.
Yes.
So how do you really see city planning or urban planning being at the core of sanitation planning in Kerala situation? I can understand in Gujarat, Maharashtra, but
No, so
I
if
can
you
fail to understand in Kerala.
Yeah, so one of the core functions of planners is to, or of an urban planning exercise would be to allocate land for treatment facilities.
That way, yes.
And foresee what treatment facility can come up. I understand you can't, so alternatives like fecal sludge management or decentralized treatment have emerged recently. So if you leave aside the fact that, okay, for a sewer system, you would need would need a land parcel which is at the lowest point in the city or near the lowest point in the city. But there is no reservation for any land in Alleppuzha. We tried to find out in the master plan that was worked on in 2014 or published in 2014. They discuss all the issues that wastewater management need to be discussed, but they do not allocate land. And
there is no land in Kerala. That's what you mentioned.
No,
because it's all land
so
in the private sector.
No, I don't think there is so at least one respondent one respondent has told me that one can get away with that argument, always get away with that argument. But
no, because you also stress upon NIMBYism, huh?
Yeah,
you do stress a lot about NIMBYism.
Yes, but I think coming back to the earlier point, sorry, I don't think you can't find a land for testing one facility in Kerala. And if you give people a taste of good facility, they may want to, or they may become acceptable. They may accept your facilities if they are maintained well. But you've not given them a taste of facility. And I am told that there are large campuses in the state where this can be tried, where now, because FSM is in one way allows you to have your treatment facilities anywhere. You don't need the treatment facility at the lowest point in the city. So it can be at a hill, in the hill, etc. So you can certainly try. Second, I don't blame planning per se, but I think the planners can do better in Kerala.
Oh, indeed, everywhere in the country. Huh?
Yes.
But see, when you responded now, I get a further reassurance of your implicit inclination towards centralization, because you are mentioning that there can be a place in the city at a lower altitude where it could have been planned out in the development plan. Anyway, we can talk about it, but I think it was very good to understand.
Let me just refute your allegation. I do not
allegation. It's an assumption, because I almost felt that should we go for centralized, because there are proponents of decentralization, especially because decentralization is a traditional method. It's a traditional method, not a really new thing. Huh?
Yeah. So to be very clear, I am not a proponent of the centralized system. I think both centralized, if needed, centralized can be done, but and in most cities, centralized and other systems exist side by side. There is no denying that. I don't think centralized systems have, or there is adequate research to know that centralized systems are fail to serve the poor, especially. So I am not a proponent, or I do not, I wouldn't advocate for centralized systems in towns in Kerala for sure. At the same time, one cannot deny the fact that they have worked well in other parts of the world for various reasons. So if that is the solution that local people want, they can go for it, but be aware of all the other pitfalls that come with a centralized solution. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Paresh. And over to you, Ekta. Thank you so much for nice presentation and even very good argumentations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, very good argumentation, actually. I also felt so. Yes.
Thank you.
He's ready to actually just take it on.
So I'm not worried about your viva, actually.
Thank you.
I'm not sure about your thesis, but I'm not worried about
your defense. That's well put. Thank you. Over to you, Ekta.
Yeah. The challenge is in writing. That is true. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mansi. Thanks, Vishal, and thanks, Mr. Paresh, for this presentation. And it's very well documented, and discussion is very nice. So may I request anybody else who would like to ask any question or add on to something to this discussion? So, okay. So now it's time to announce our next sessions. So let's join us on 23rd November at 5 p.m. IST to discuss commoning water experimental learning to improve water governance on Wednesday, and also on Friday water session. Water Arts on 25th of November at 5 p.m. on a comic novel on Ways of Knowing with Paresh Narain and his team. Also, join us for the next thesis session on the 16th of December at 5 p.m. with Shreyasi Bhattacharya. Thesis session is on every third Friday. So join us for more theses and to know more about researchers who are working hard to do the research and implement something good for our society. So promote www.foundation.in. Join us for the more information. Follow us on our website and contact us for any information. Thank you. Thanks a lot.